Here we go, man. Here with my good friend, my brother, my colleague, gentleman I have spent a great deal of time with over the past few years, Mr. Tony Rubleski. Tony, thanks for being with me, man.
Honored to be here, man. Good to see you looking good over North Carolina.
And you are in Michigan, correct?
Yeah, the metropolis of Michigan, Grand Haven, and it's about 20 degrees outside, so I need to come see you.
Yeah, about to say we're broaching wintertime, and
Yep.
so winter is a relative term depending upon who you're talking to. So for us in the South, winter for you is like early summer, right?
Yeah.
Actually, it does get kind of pretty
Yeah.
up there. But I know, I've noticed this about Canadians. I've noticed, I had an old friend of mine who was a pastor
Mhm.
years ago in Minnesota, and he said he was talking about how they don't plan any major church stuff at all from late spring to early fall. I always thought, I said, how come? He goes, because there's no way, and they can be completely dedicated church people,
Yep.
but there's no way people in Minnesota are going to spend a Sunday afternoon doing a bunch of church event related things when they've got this window of warm weather.
Yeah. You get to the 3 or 4 months of winter, summer, and it's like the Midwest goes on party mode. It's tough to get them to do anything.
Yeah, so I mean, I spent a lot of my life growing up in Texas, and so winter is one weekend, and then of course you're
Yeah.
right into the other season of the year, summer.
Yep.
But I love the cold. I love snow, and I just enjoy it. But I like anything, man. This stuff can get overdone. But now I was out there a couple of years ago for your Mind Capture event, and
Mhm.
did one again recently here. You hosted in Chicago. So as I said in the bio at the outset, and this is for our listeners, Tony is a keynote speaker. Now, we're in a different era, Tony. The era of social media has made content so freely available. You can watch, whether it's music or a speaker or you name it, you can watch and listen to anything you want for the most part, online or by podcast or what have you. So where is the speaking industry right now?
That is a great question, my friend, and I'll give you my best gut read. It's changing rapidly, and it's in a state of constant evolution. Not a pretty answer. A lawyer would not like that. It's not specific, but it's evolving rapidly, CJ. And you really hit a good point. Content, the free line has gotten so massive that the paid line is hard to cross over.
Right.
Now, there's always needs for meetings right now. I work with a lot of meeting planners. However, you're up against free speakers, TEDx speakers, governors, celebrities, people that can Skype in, they can Zoom in. There's now holograms that are being used in certain venues. I'm not kidding you. Where you can
Hologram.
You can hologram somebody in, and they can be in a boardroom. Very Steven Spielberg kind of AI. It's already here.
So that's live.
Yeah, they can actually have you like hologram like an image in, and you can give a talk. Now, it's not as obviously well known yet, but within 5-10 years, if not sooner, it'll probably become very standard issue because of cost, distance, time. So I look at that and I say, okay, you've got to wake up every day, like as Les Brown taught me, one of the great speakers in our industry, the legend, my mentor as well, is you got to be hungry.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing this 14 years coming up, CJ, full time. And man, there are times I think, okay, you have a great year, you can maybe coast. You can't.
Right.
It's just too competitive. And that healthy sort of paranoia makes you forced to raise your game, keep creating, writing, and you got to keep putting stuff out there that's of value. And you've got to differentiate your content against all the free stuff, CJ.
Yeah.
And someone can go on their phone and point and click down the rabbit hole in Alice in Wonderland and find thousands of years of content. So how are you going to stand out? That's what I've been teaching for 15, 16 years is mind capture. How do you stand out and get attention when no one's really paying attention or there's too much information, particularly the last decade? And you've been a pioneer, CJ. I'm a fan. Full disclosure, I'm a part of your coaching program, and it's like the biggest steal. I've told you this.
Yes, you have.
It's ridiculous how much you don't charge. You know what I mean?
That's
and
right.
And I've been very a fan because it works. It's good stuff, and I'm always learning. So I know I took us out to left field there, like what's going on in the speaking industry. it's just evolving constantly. And most industries are going through this, CJ. So it's a
Yeah.
very good question to keep me on my game to start with.
Well, and that's part of the reason why I wanted you on here, because you are cognizant of the ever-changing nature of your industry. And you're right. A lot, I mean, music is this way. Uh, Publishing, book publishing is this way.
Yeah.
Movies, etc., is this way. You know, we all applaud the democratization of media, how things of the, because of the technological platforms, the playing field has been leveled.
Yeah.
But then that means the competition is that much more fierce. But what's interesting though is, even though we talk about a lot of these, technologies that are like the hologram thing,
Mhm.
when I notice a lot of the places that you speak, it might be at a chamber of commerce here, a
Yep.
real estate event here, whatever, some corporation there. Um, Not everybody has caught up to those things. And
Mhm.
so what you find, I'm sure, is that the very same fundamental competitive aspects are still very much a part of the game as they always were. It's just a changing playing field, but maybe now even more so. Your branding, your content, the things that you're putting out there, your differentiating factor, have got to be just so on point, because it's like in music. Great, all these bands can get on YouTube and record their own albums at home and put them on iTunes or what have you. But does that mean anybody's going to listen? Does that mean anybody's going to care?
Yeah.
So when it comes to being aggressive about those things, Tony, how much time are you investing yourself just in that aspect of it? What you put in that competitive category.
Again, if I were to put this into kind of a quick gut read of how much time I spend marketing, probably 70 to 80% of a given week when I'm not flying around is spent on marketing. I'm in the office today in Michigan. I'm off the road. Next week, I go to Washington, D.C. to speak, jump on a plane that day, go to Las Vegas to meet with a couple meeting planners and some other people out there for meetings. That week is not a lost week, CJ, but it's not speaking or, well, this one day is speaking Wednesday in DC, but I lose travel time, time change, and I can't spend as much time in those meetings doing marketing. So this week, we're recording this on a Friday, okay?
Right.
All week has been working phones and emails and follow-up and mailing packets out and post, setting up social media posts. And we get done with the interview, I'll have 3 to 4 more hours of actual phone and email time with meeting planners, okay? So it's the non-sexy part that people don't see as much on social media. They think, oh, you're here, you're here, you're here. Absolutely. There is a lot of perception building going on that's congruent. I don't show all the non-fun stuff of phone and email and mailing things because it's not as exciting. But if that doesn't happen, the stage time doesn't appear.
Right.
So there's this quote that I think you might have heard me say in Chicago at the boot camp when you were there, was in the age of YouTube, everybody wants a 10-year solution to a problem in 60 seconds.
Right.
It doesn't exist, man.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, I look at your programs you do, CJ, and when I have you teach at my events, is you really are good at being the professor of harsh reality, saying, hey, it takes work. You got to have the imaging. You got to be committed. You need to know your message. And if you're all over the map, good luck.
Right.
So I think another resonance point amongst our friendship is you're direct. You tell people maybe what they don't always want to hear, but you've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
So you've earned the right with your credibility and your track record, CJ, to say, hey, let me shortcut you and tell you how it really works.
Right.
And in an age of everyone wanting to be flowery in social media and, oh, it's all kumbaya, that's not an easy sell, CJ.
Yeah.
So
when people then, when you say the speaking industry, obviously that's a broad term. I remember speaking at an event for a friend of mine a few years ago, and there was somebody who spoke right before me, and he came in, he had a little entourage of people traveling. You could tell this guy's a traveling speaker.
Yeah.
And nice guy, and gave a great little talk. And well, he had listened to me, and I was talking about the social media aspect and how many followers, and he was just very intrigued by that. And so he'd never heard that kind of presentation before. So he comes up to me afterwards and he goes, dude, I am so intrigued by your whole brand and what you're doing and this and that. And he said, I could get you so many gigs. And I thought, yeah, but dude, nobody wants to hear from a metal motivator. What are you talking about? I said, who do you know? Harley Davidson? Gibson guitars. I mean, who are you talking about? He goes, no. He goes, I got a ton of company. You could speak at trade shows and whatever. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. He said, well, he goes, well, I got this one company that does headphones. I said, well, do they hire motivational speakers? He goes, no, you would go on the floor and you would give a 30-minute presentation on the headphones. I said, what are you talking about? I said, is that what you do? He said, yeah. I said, I've never heard of that before, that there's people who just go, they're just professional speakers. And in other words, they don't have their own content.
Yeah.
They just go in and speak, like memorize brochures or something, and they just go out. And so it's a broad, when you say the speaking industry, it's really, really broad.
Yeah. Well, if I'm hearing correct, what he's describing is almost like a paid spokesperson, CJ. Or the old pitch man that was at the carnival in the 50s, or the old preacher man at the beginning of the 20th century, fire and brimstone from the circus tent. Right. Those are traditional speakers that do a message or a product or service. And religion, obviously, is a message. So don't be fooled. A lot of people say, hey, you're one of those motivational speakers. So I get that a lot. And then what's happened is the mass media is they always go to Saturday Night Live. They think of Chris Farley, the motivational speaker, given the riot act. And I'd laugh too. It's hysterical. So there's different forms of speaking. Professional speaking typically is paint in the brush of a Tony Robbins. Some of the jokes about the Geico ads, Pinocchio, the motivational speaker, Chris Farley, the motivational speaker, anti-drugs. So I look at it more from a business and association realm is where I play in. So a lot of business groups will say, hey, we need to come in and talk about leadership for our employees. Again, it's a timely topic. It's evergreen, CJ. There's no shortage of human knowledge in the quest to get better. So I say, hey, here's my perspective on this evergreen topic called leadership. And I call it Trailblazers. I consider you to be a trailblazer because you're doing unique things. And I'll tell an audience at the end, I spring it on them, you're all trailblazers. You all have these traits. This is my way to get in the door to remind you of how good you are or things you've forgotten that you should be working on. So it's a two-sided coin. So leadership is an area I brought in a lot. Referral marketing, you've seen me teach it at a couple of events that I've hosted because everyone wants to know the quicker way to get customers. Right. And I use referral marketing every day in the professional speaking realm because I'll tell you this, out of 20 referrals, I track it, about 19 out of 20 don't convert right away. They just don't. Right. So there's one that those 20 in the first 30 days will convert. That means a lot of people like what I have, but don't have a need, a budget. They go with the governor, they go with a rock star instead of me, or they go with someone free. So there's a lot of hustle going on to make that one appearance, that one deal, make it go. There's 19 that don't go right away, CJ. So as much as I'd like to think I'm good at marketing, I know how to do it. There's still a lot of work behind the system to make that stage time happen.
So this is you speaking your own content. You're not the, the paid sponsor or what have you. Now, you obviously have a repertoire of stuff that you're going to cover.
Correct.
And so depending upon who the target audience is, that's what you're presenting. And, it's funny to me, it does get, everybody gets categorized in the motivational speaking aspect of it. I often tell people, when I talk about doing this MarketHead podcast, I said, well, yeah, what's the number one thing that people will ask me about most often? It's usually about the marketing stuff. Even though they know me as motivational, whatever, they tend to ask me about the marketing stuff. That's the more problem I get asked. Yep. If it's not that, it's how to get over a breakup. That's about the only two questions that I'm going to get. But I'll often tell people that, when I was going to do this podcast and whatnot, I said, the motivational stuff is just sort of built in.
Yeah.
Because we have to be motivated as communicators. We have to be motivated as thought leaders, as influencers, et cetera. So that's just sort of built into the system. But ultimately, this is the way we deliver, ways for our clients to solve their problems. So in the end, Tony, I mean, isn't that really what it comes down to? Is your client has a problem and you're coming in there to solve it. Your value is determined by the problem that you solve, right? That's why we pay the lawyer more than we pay the plumber.
Correct.
because of the size of the problem that they solve.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to someone in my office this week, and I thought about, if you really strip down what I do, people buy my words, they buy my energy. And it's kind of weird. I hop on a plane and I get up and tell people what to do, or philosophy, or I call them strong opinions, CJ. And here's what I think they're really trying to look for: reinforcement of what they're doing well. They're also looking for a new idea or two to challenge their assumptions. And they want to have it delivered in a way where it's motivating and provocative. Here's a secret I'm going to throw out that I don't share with a lot of groups. So buckle in, grab a pen. The highest level speakers, typically at the celebrity status, get paid for who they are, not what they know.
Good.
And as you're moving up in different seminar circuits or in the speaking circuits across the board, typically the more keynote you do, like the less time you speak, like 30 minutes or 45 minutes as a keynote, you're not doing any teaching, CJ. You're entertaining people. I hate to break the news to you. The more time you have, the less fee, more teaching you do. So it seems like an inverted, like a pyramid with upside down. People go, that doesn't make any sense. It's the old adage, I think Maya Angelou would say, people don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel.
Right.
And I know it sounds maybe a little bit old school cliche, but a lot of your great motivational speakers, it's the Chinese buffet syndrome. And I love them because I do this, so I'm not knocking my craft. People leave out there really fired up. A lot of times they don't know where to go. So what you always try to do is make resources available. You have a book available, you have a report. You say, hey, join me on social media, or I have a coaching program like you do, CJ. You want them for reinforcement to come back to you and engage you down the rabbit hole. Right. But I can't change somebody's life in 45 minutes. I just know this. It's arrogance, hubris. That's just not realistic. If I can disrupt their thinking positively, and I'll say to a group, I like to see your pupils like the light bulb go off, or the match that I set off in your head where you go, oh my gosh. And I see them taking notes or putting something in their phone or looking at their coworker like, oh my gosh, yes. I would like to be the conduit that lights the match and sets them off.
Right.
And if they leave the room changed, bonus. If I get them fired up for 45 minutes, great. But I know expectations, I cannot change their life that day the way they may think. Now, I do get some emails, CJ. You get them too. I know this because I've seen you teach. Mm-hmm. Or, hey, I saw you speak, or I saw your podcast 3 years ago, CJ, and it changed my world. We don't know what that's going to happen. Right. Because there's a lot of people that don't have that impact, and we can't set expectations out. All we can do is present the message, and if it falls on the right ears, it may kindle or light them up. That's what we're trying to do, CJ. Yeah. We have different ways we do it, but the goal is to advance the needle, I believe, the human race forward with positivity.
Right.
Different ways to deliver it. And you have an audience that intrigues me, that I know is listening. I thank them again for their time, that may be newer to this. Mm-hmm. But we'll welcome them to the tent. Right. Because the world's got all kinds of problems that we need people to step up and help solve. So you can tell I'm getting fired up.
Yeah.
This is my passion, man, is watching the light bulb or the spark or the match go off in their eyeball or their brain. They go, I get it. Then we're off to the races.
Yeah, that's an important point to note, and you said a lot there. We should charge them for this portion of the podcast. And if not, then again, ladies and gentlemen, always say thank you when someone does something nice for you. And
there you go.
Somebody just did something nice for you. We do. We do welcome people to this because I can't address everything. You can't address everything. There's more industries and people and needs and problems out there. So there's always room at the top for more to, move their way up and what have you. So you're all welcome underneath the tent.
Yeah.
You got to bring your game, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to what you just said a couple minutes ago about that, if you're limited in your time, you're basically entertaining people. You're not able to give a whole lot of instruction. As a speaker, you'd love to do both.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that kind of goes behind a little bit of the motive for what you've been doing for a while now, which is the Mind Capture Bootcamps. Yep. Because it gives you the ability to be a lot more instructive and go into more detail. And, I've been to 2 of them. Mm-hmm. You've invited me out twice, and I've had an outstanding time, met some amazing people. And, I tell you what, I got to hand it to Tony because, a lot of people can't quite put their heads around a metal motivation kind of figure. Now, of course, you have a love of heavy metal yourself. So this is a bit your background. Of course, we spent a lot of time together.
I even have a metal shirt on.
But you said, you know what? You said, you value what was happening, excuse me, and you wanted your people exposed to something that you felt like was operating based upon principles. And one of the things that thrills me, especially about what you just said, is that everything that you're saying is principle based.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's great because, yes, we can talk all day long about the ever-changing nature of technology and industries and what have you. But what's great is that the principles remain the same. I think I even said this at your last boot camp in Chicago. I don't teach social media marketing, for example. I teach marketing on social media.
Yep.
Because these principles, like what you talk about with referrals, and they are as old as the speaking industry itself. And people think that things have somehow changed, and we've got to learn a different, but because of the smartphones, because of this, no, it's not the case at all. Whether it be great music, great art, or writing books, or being a speaker, it really is the tried and true things that make the difference. Now, you said you've been in the speaking industry for 14 years.
Yep.
You mentioned Les Brown being a mentor to you. Nobody more old school than guys like Les Brown. It's great to be able to be influenced. You kind of in between the worlds, right? You have your foot in the old school and then your foot in the new school.
You got it, my friend. And I'm a Gen Xer demographically. So if we had a couple of our friends like Brad that are good with the millennials and the boomers, I'm stuck in the middle at 46. So a lot of my mentors are boomers that are over 55. And I have people that work for me and other speakers that are in their 20s, CJ. So I'm kind of that guy in the middle of the tug of war that says, all right, what am I going to learn from each of you? And then figure out what I don't want and what I need to do to be myself. Okay.
Right.
And some of the young speakers coming up, I love their firebrandness. They're so direct. A couple names that come to mind: Gary Vaynerchuk. Okay.
Right.
I like his energy, and I know that he's done very, very well. Point of difference is I don't drop F-bombs every other word, and that's not my style, but it works for Gary. Awesome. I have other firebrands, Larry Winget. Larry Winget's a boomer. I've interviewed him a few times. He's kind of like, tell it like it is, CJ, old school. But you can't argue with the guy is the fact that there's timeless wisdom hidden in there. There's up and coming speakers that are, early 20s that I go, wow, that I'm always learning from them. Right. And I'm watching how they capture attention. What slides are they using? What slides are they not? How do they tell a story? How do they get people engaged? How do they kinesthetically get the audience moving to learn better or retain better? So I look at this buffet of speakers, and there's always up and comers, there's the established, and there's the legends. Right. And what are you learning from each of them? The best music, I'm going to go over to music for a minute because you and I met that way through Metal Motivation, your other division. And I look at music and say, there's always the grandfathers of rock and roll. You've got your Kisses, your Alice Coopers, your Metallicas. You've got your up and comers that are starting to make a name. And it's instructive to watch how they're doing it, what they're borrowing from the legends, that they're completely knocking off and sometimes giving credit, what they're doing new that's innovative. And then also the next wave coming up that says, all right, how do we keep pushing the needle? Give an example, Gene Simmons from Kiss. I've read his books. I've got on my bookshelf, Me Inc., Sex, Lies, Kiss, Sex, Lies, Money. It's Gene Simmons. I've met him. Yep. I've met Gene at my Dan Kennedy event where Dan brought him in, and we got to hang out with Gene a little bit, and it was hysterical. I actually tell it as one of my keynote stories. And Gene would tell you, there's only a few bands right now that he kind of watches in the rock space. And he's eccentric, but he's brilliant. And he said, look, we're not a rock and roll band, we're a rock and roll brand. You know this, CJ. But a lot of people miss the point of what he's really saying. But he mentioned a couple of bands, Foo Fighters. Okay, I saw Foo Fighters about a year ago today. And Dave Grohl is one of those few guys that will give credit to the legends, and he's really at the top of their game with Foo Fighters. But Gene would say, yeah, they're actually out there hustling. They know how to market. They treat their fans well. Right. If you strip down the principles, is what he's saying is, yeah, they might have borrowed, and we might have been an influence as Kiss on Dave Grohl from Foo Fighters, but they're out there hustling and doing their own branding too. So there's dual mentorship, CJ. Right. It's constantly occurring. The youngins are pushing the old, I would say legends to keep moving the needle. The old ones are saying, hey, we're watching and seeing what you're doing to positively disrupt it and change the game as well. So there's a constant mutual dual mentorship and respect. Right. And people that are in the know in an industry, there's that dynamic constantly going on. And there are also some disruptors that come way out of left field. Stay on music. I'll give you a couple that come out of way out of left field that disrupt and they disappear. Jimi Hendrix.
Right.
The left-handed guitar god from Seattle comes out late 60s, drops on the scene for about 3 years, then dies.
Mm-hmm.
But his influence was like, where did that anomaly come from?
Right.
So you look at the elements of any industry. There are the great disruptors like a Hendrix. There are the tried and true legends like Metallica, Kiss, Alice Cooper, for example. Then you've got the next wave of the mid-range disruptors, the Foo Fighters, the Linkin Parks, that are doing different things. And then there's someone out right now in a garage, maybe in Portland, Oregon, or in Memphis, Tennessee, doing something the world's going to go 3 years from now. Where did that come from?
Right.
Where did that come from? So I know that's kind of out there, but you and I love rock and roll. I thought, CJ, you've heard me say this, I thought I'd be signing boobs at my age, not books.
Right.
You had a different plan for me,
Right.
So the things from music definitely move into marketing. They move into communication, to speaking. So going back to what you're saying here, to me, I'm looking at this whole thing. It all comes back to its core marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just cut through all the crazy.
Right.
You've talked about the number one question you get: how do you market it? How do you build the brand? It takes work.
Yeah.
It takes learning. It takes refinement. It takes the core principles. Speaking, mental motivation, music, they're all about really who can market the best, CJ. Let's look at Kiss. Gene Simmons has taken so much heat, him and Paul Stanley, the brothers in arms, about how they're not good musicians. Who cares? They know how to market. They know how to entertain, baby. I've seen them multiple times. You have too, and met Gene. They're great marketers. And oh, by the way, their music's pretty good too.
I love
Tony
Kiss.
Robbins.
Yep.
Tony Robbins, man, the king of the motivational industry. There are countless people that don't like him for a variety of reasons. I don't care to go down the rabbit hole. But here's what he did successfully. He brought motivation to the masses, utilizing things that are called NLP, and in psychological circles, neuro-linguistic programming. There are lots of doctors of NLP that can't stand him. Here's why. They're jealous. And the other reason is he outmarketed them, C.G. Ortiz.
Yeah.
He brought it to the masses. And when you have that, you're going to have millions of followers and fans, true believers, but you're going to have millions of people that go, I don't understand him, I don't like him.
Right.
Get used to it, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And, there's no getting around the fact that it all comes down to the individual or the group, if it's a band, to determine their success. I see this a lot with the rise over the past few years of high ticket coaching, for example.
Okay.
So, the principle behind high ticket is to say, okay, well, let's really target our audience, and let's bring in the best that we can find that are the most ideal, that need this program the most. So you have to actually, even though you're going to spend a fortune for this coaching program, you still have to apply for the process. The reason why they do that is to ferret out the weak and the unprepared and those who are not ideal. But regardless of that, still, I remember speaking with one high ticket coach, and they said the reasons why they got into high ticket coaching. One of the things that they said was the only thing that bothers them about it is they feel now a greater burden and a greater responsibility for the success of that coaching client, because they're paying so much more money now. So like we made note of the fact that my coaching group is so inexpensive. Well, I don't care whether you apply it or not, right?
Yeah.
Because there's no love lost. But if I've got you now for $10,000 for 10 weeks in a course, well, I'm going to be a lot more concerned whether you do it. However, I remember when I went to get my degree at the Art Institute years ago, I drew very well when I was a kid in high school, won art contests in high school. Then I went into a classroom filled with people who won art contests in their high school. And so suddenly became very, very competitive. And so, I graduated in 92. So years removed, I've got a few of those people who are on my Facebook friend list. Well, only a few, because only a few ever did anything with it. But I remember that was a $24,000 price tag.
Yep.
Right. So, so people have asked me, they go, you seem to have done well, and they wanted to put their kid in the Art Institute. Do you recommend it? I said, I don't know, because I don't know your kid.
Yeah.
I could recommend it because it was a good experience for me, but it was only a good experience for me because I busted my ass.
There it is.
You know what I mean? the principles are available. The issue is just going to be, what are you going to do with it? And I think when it comes to this, that's like Tony said, let's blow through all the fluff here and let's get to the core of what this is. It's hardcore marketing, no matter what your business is. And today we're speaking more so about the speaking industry. Sure, you want to you want to become a speaker, Tony supports you 110%. But at the same time, what the voice that goes in the back of his mind is, I hope you bring your game. You know, because once we step on that field, it's, you know, so it's like football, man. Two guys, they'll high five each other afterwards, but they're on the field, they're going to knock the crap out of each other.
Yeah, CJ, bring up a good point. Some new clients I've worked in the past, they say, I want to get on Oprah or get on Ellen and do a big media interview to start. I go, watch what you wish for, because if you get it and you don't do well, it'll spread just as fast if you hit it out of the park. So it's preparing. It's not saying you have to put in all your dues and you have to wait 5 or 10 years to be knighted as a speaker. You can speed it up, but you got to get repetition and practice in. And CJ, I get this all the time. People walk up afterwards and say, hey, I want to do what you do. You make it look really easy. I'm like, awesome. They say, well, tell me what to do. I'm like, well, I don't usually give free advice because you won't do a damn thing with it.
Right.
Human nature. But if I sent you a bill, here's what I would tell you. At $1,000 for an hour, you need to get into Toastmasters and speak and speak and speak as soon as you can, wherever you can, even if it's at the local Kiwanis, the local Rotary Club. If you can get on that schedule, because that's even getting competitive, and you better be good. Well, I don't want to do that. I want to get on the big stage. Well, you don't get to the major leagues by skipping the first 3 levels typically in baseball. There's A-ball, AA, AAA. There's a reason you go through those progressions, so you don't look like an idiot at the major league level. Even if you're really, really good, like a Jimi Hendrix type of talent out of nowhere, they're going to have to spend some time using the minors or open for somebody else. Right. Hendrix didn't just walk into Haight-Ashbury with Bill Graham, the legendary producer, and say, hey, I want to open up for, you know, all these bands. You know, they said, no, you're going to open up for the Yardbirds. You're going to open up for Jefferson Airplane, Mr. Hendrix. Well, I'm really, really good. I'm Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix was an opening band at one point, CJ.
Sure.
He didn't just jump on and headline over the Mamas and the Papas. They had to go, oh, he's really good. And eventually his talent propelled him to headliner status. But he had to put the chops in, man. And Hendrix didn't wake up out of the womb with a guitar and know how to play Purple Haze. A lot of years practicing in his bedroom by himself in front of no audience to learn how to write Purple Haze. You know? Right. So I just look at this. I love these types of sessions because you can cut through years of bullshit and really strip it down. Maybe there's a 19-year-old in Poland watching this interview that says, you know what, I want to do what CJ's doing or what Tony's doing. But I know some steps now I'm going to have to look at doing to get to that level. Right. That's the beauty of knowledge. You're buying a shortcut in wisdom. Really is what you're doing. I've studied. I got books here like you do. I go to seminars. I teach at them. I'm like a 7-year-old always going, why? Why do we do it this way? Oh, really? I didn't know that. And that childlike curiosity in a world that's so adult, so corporate, man. Sometimes I'll throw this exactly. I'm like, how many of you remember when you were 7? And they're like, where is he going? Well, remember how I used to think about open possibilities and everything was fun and you had music playing and you were like, yeah, possibility thinking. What happened to that? You're a creature of what? Habit. Right. Most of your habits serve you. But I will say this, I said it in Chicago. Sometimes you got to scratch the record, the old groove, and disrupt it and go, we've been doing the same thing for 30 years here and it's not working anymore. Or it's going to dissipate. We have to rethink it. So how's that? I'm getting all emotional.
Great. No. Great. So 14 years in the industry, what got you into speaking to begin with?
It was a challenge. I was working in advertising sales. And a lot of my clients said, dude, you're really good at teaching this. You know how to market, you know how to brand. You're kind of geeky about it. You love to teach. They said, you need to write a book. I said, I don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to do that. That's for somebody else. After about 2 or 3 years of prompting, they said, you need to write a book. I said, I'll do it. I told like 5 people I was going to write a book, CJ. And I was like, when's your book coming out? When's your book coming out? And they literally drove me nuts.
Right.
So this happened. Well, I'm looking back in the archives now, 16, 17 years ago, the first manuscript. My daughters were little. My son wasn't even born yet. Braden, he's 16 as we taped this. He wasn't here yet. I thought, I don't have time. I've got 2 young daughters, a young family, you know. But what happened is they forced me to call me out. When's the book coming out? So I started to write a bit here, a bit there. And, you know, it took me like 18 months to write a manuscript. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing, CJ. I did go to one seminar by a guru named Dan Pointer. He wrote the self-publishing manual. And get that. Dan Pointer was a legend. Okay.
I
I
have
had a
that book.
chance to see him for a full day. And that shortcutted way back before we had phones everywhere. That was pre-Google days, CJ. So I got around someone that knew how to do it. I bought their book. I saw him speak. It compelled me more and more to get the manuscript done, but it took 18 months.
Right.
And now you can get a book done much quicker if you want. The internet, YouTube, Google videos, there's so much more resources than we had back pre-web, per se. So that was the genesis. It was more of people were like, you need to do this, you need to do that. I said, I won't want to do it. I got sick of them bugging me and just did it.
Right.
Little did I know it opened a Pandora's box of opportunity. Not a negative term there, but Pandora's box of like all of a sudden, wow, all these big endorsements started to come in. And CJ, it freaked me out. I'm in my early 30s. And these are all the big names saying, you kind of know what you're doing here. I'm like, there's a lot of responsibility and pressure when those names start to endorse you, CJ.
Yeah.
That's often not ever talked about. But all of a sudden you got some of the big names saying, you really know what you're doing and you better go out and do it. And it's like, whoa. And when you're in your early 30s, you still don't really know what's going on. You just don't. So there's that great responsibility when they see talent to not disappoint them either, CJ.
Right.
I don't think I've ever shared that in a live interview like we're doing. But there's also that pressure from the industry to say, hey, don't waste your talents, man. So, 15 years later and some change, here we are. We're still in the game, a few gray hairs, the kids are older,
Yeah.
a few hundred flights.
You did the 200 flights. Wow. Now you did the Toastmasters thing, right? You paid your dues.
Mm-hmm.
You learned how you improved your skills. Again, you said a few times here, there's that constant, push to improve and to learn and to analyze, and to the 7-year-old to ask those questions. What's the downside to the speaking industry for you?
All right, cue in the Star Wars theme music of Darth Vader. There's lessons in adversity in the dark side. It will take a toll on your relationships. You and I have talked offline.
So much like a rock star.
Yeah, the cliches are very real. If you go at something full throttle, there will be burned trees in the forest to the path to get there.
Right.
And it's not easy on children. It's not easy on spouses. I love them all. It's kind of like a Freddie Mercury song. I've paid my dues.
Right.
If you listen to We Are the Champions, there's a lot of deep life lessons what Freddie Mercury is saying in that anthem. And we can all relate to those personal dues we have to pay. There's trade-offs, CJ. This is not for the faint of heart. I'm going to be touring heavily by the grace of God into 19. We march. We're all in. We moved all the allies in. We'll be hitting 40 some odd cities, all out. And I look at it and say, you know what? I'm in a position in life where we've paid some dues. It hasn't been easy. And now the kids are older and we go out on the road heavily. And it's not to be reckless. It's not out of revenge. It's not out of get even. It's now we can teach the high level and serve a lot more people because there's not as many entanglements, CJ.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tough. I mean, you've watched the Metallica documentaries where they're in rehab. And before they went on the tour, this was many years ago, they all got divorced around the same time. I'm not saying or implying they did it by design, but they were going all in, and that takes a toll on those relationships. Now, I'm not trying to be negative, like you can't be a speaker and author and be married, but you got to know what you're going into, man. Right. And I remember 15, 16 years ago, a couple early mentors said, hey, if you're going to go out and speak and write, be prepared. You better have a solid relationship. It may not make it, Tony. And I didn't want to hear that. I was like, no, that's not motivational. It became true. That's on me and my former partner. So I look at that and say, hey, when you are passionate, you are going to have a sexy TED talk. I don't think anyone's given that. Maybe that's a TED talk. Right. The trade-off of success. Right. 18 minutes of what you are not taught about. If you go and play at a high level, what will probably happen? There are going to be trade-offs. A lot of time away. Billy Graham, the late great preacher. I know this would hit home for you. I heard him on one of the Christian channels years ago driving somewhere. And the interviewer asked him, and I'll do the sort of my take on it, perception. He said, basically, what's your biggest regret, Mr. Graham? And Billy was on there for a second. He said, well, I regret the fact I missed my kids growing up. Mm-hmm. Where was he at, CJ? He was doing revivals all over the world. Right. So he gave up time from his closest kin to go bring millions of people to the faith. In his journey, his mission was to bring them to God, salvation, okay? But he had regrets too, because his kids didn't really know him, or they didn't know their dad as much as they could have, or they maybe would have liked to. So I deal with that sometimes. When I'm flying around, it looks sexy. When I'm jet lagged and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm sleeping in Denver airport, because it makes more sense than taking a hotel ride and getting up at 4 a.m., I think about that. So here's the deal. How bad do you want it? Every person has to know that going in, there's going to be a trade-off. And we're in this instant YouTube. I have a Lamborghini, a magical house, and 3 homes in Europe. Yeah, but you're going to bust your butt to get it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And we pay our dues, man, and it's okay. If you can get through that and you're really, really passionate. There's 3 things that have never left me, CJ, besides my faith walk. My books, my bookshelf next to me. I got all kinds of books, CJ. Okay?
Right.
They've never left me. My music has never left me. And my passion for teaching has never left me.
Right.
You know my story the last 10 years alone, man. It's been kind of crazy. But those 3 or 4 things, my faith walk, have always been there. And I thank God, even when I have that candle, the flame of me wanting to teach has almost gone out a couple of times. You've heard of, I called you a couple of times last year. I was thinking, man, do I still want to do this at times?
Right.
There's another thing going on here. And in respect, I won't dig down the rabbit hole there, but I wasn't really thinking, do I still want to do this?
Right.
So those dark nights of the soul are very real. How do you overcome it? It's not easy. You will have to dig down the well. And if you really want to go after it, be prepared.
Yeah.
Now, on the flip side, if you want to go positive, I'll let you ask that question.
Yeah. What are the upsides to
Thank
the
you.
speaking industry?
I love watching the light bulb go off. I call it the match. When I see the pupils, their head, their reaction, the body language, I go, I get it. I love watching people get inspired. I still am shocked I get paid to do this, CJ. I don't take it lightly. Every time I go on stage, if it's 5 people or 500 or 5,000 on a telecast or a simulcast, I'm thinking, you know what? They're giving me the gifts of their time and attention. That is a huge premium. Occasionally, you get it. You get those email messages. You get that handwritten card. You get that person that walks up to you at a live event and says, you changed my life, or hey, I read your book 10 years ago. And you go, whoa, I did not know the impact that my talent, my gift to teach could have on someone. That ripple effect is very real, CJ. There's someone listening right now that something you said, or I said, or a book, or a band we recommended, that 10 years down the road could change their destiny. Those ripple effects are very, very real.
Right.
It's not about ego anymore at this point. I'm grateful. I'm 46. Let's say the building falls in after this interview. I want to go north, head to the light. That's the plan, brother. But I could say, you know what, Lord, it was a long, interesting ride. And man, there was a lot going on in 46 years. I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
So every day to me is a premium where I'm borrowed time. I'm not being fatalistic, CJ, but anytime when I'm making a phone call, an email, a Zoom interview, a live audience, a telecast, however I get a chance to go one-to-one or one-to-many, I go, man, I'm grateful I can make a living doing this too, and get to see the world and meet great people. So there's some upsides.
Yeah, tremendous. And going back to what you said a little while ago about passion. Yeah, because it can, life and business has a way, a career has a way of beating your passion out of you. Of course, when you're younger and, you know, you're driven, there's an insatiable, unquenchable fire in you to do what it is that you do. You feel this sense of calling, whatever.
Yep.
Until you get into it and the sexiness goes. I remember when I used to do a lot of freelance artwork back in the late 90s or so. It was becoming more popular, especially as the Steve Jobs had come back to Apple and the machines got sexier and stuff. So people would see individuals like me who were working at a home back in the 90s with these sexy computers and stuff as the ideal life. And so they would ask me questions like, hey, do you ever take some time out to paint or whatever? And I'm like, what? No.
You have kids too at that point. You're busy.
Yeah. I'm like, I was like, if I can't bill somebody after this, I'm not going to do it. But they just said, well, I love to paint. It would be so therapeutic. I said, yeah, I mean, I liked that when I was young.
There's the paintings on the wall in my office.
Yeah, there you go.
I didn't do those either, by the way. Just full disclosure.
But there's a business can take its toll. Yeah. To where, you know, after you've done 1,000,001 book covers and logos and what have you, you're just like, man, I just don't know if I want to do another one, you know, go to that next. So if you get like that, you got to be cognizant of those things, because you've got to start to reinvest back in yourself. Oftentimes what I find is when I'm burnout, it's because I've spent my capital.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I've spent my fuel. And so what we tend to do is we make everything dramatic, and we say, oh, it's all over. I guess I've lost the fire. No, you didn't lose the fire, because it's a part of your DNA. You're just so entrenched and so buried underneath all the rigmarole and the mechanics of what makes, your particular business work, that you lose sight of the simple things, and you need to recharge yourself.
You hit on a point. There's two words that come to mind the last few years, and I'm in my mid-40s. Energy management. Okay. Cell phone. Everyone's got them around. Cell phone dies down energy. What do? We charge it in. We plug it back in and we recharge the phone. Why do humans not get the same concept?
Right.
Okay. We've got to sometimes take a day or two. I call it going dark. I've taught it to a lot of my direct coaching clients over the years. Is you take a day and you shut the phone and the computer off, and you grab a pen and paper or a book, or you go to a beach, or you go walk and you hike, and you literally disconnect from technology. You remove the cyborg in your head and in your hand. You say, I gotta disconnect. As Elon Musk has said that we're now a cyborg world where everyone's got a phone. It's an extension. Mm-hmm. Same with our inner spirit, our health. I know, CJ, you're a big teacher and believer in dieting and nutrition. If you don't have the right health, you're at a serious disadvantage, my friend.
Oh yeah.
And I work very hard every day. People are like, man, you're in good shape. That's thank you, number one. I work hard at it. I work out 5 or 6 times a week. Doesn't mean I run 10 miles a day. I'm not a Spartan guy and a mutter. I don't have time for that. But I make an hour and a half a day to physically do things, or go walk or do weights or hike. Because if I don't have the health, I can't travel, CJ.
Right.
I don't have the energy recharged. I get a massage every couple of weeks if possible, even if I'm on the road. I got to turn my brain off and get my muscles relaxed. I'm not a young man anymore.
Right.
So it's aggressively living with my health being a priority and self-care. Okay, when people listen to you, whether they know it or not, or me, they're doing some self-care. When I listen to Tony Robbins or Gary Vee or some of your stuff, I'm self-caring my brain and my soul. If I don't take care of it, the media will crush you. The mass media is very dark, very negative, very cynical, very much play the same even keel. People that question things are not welcome, CJ. They're the positive disruptors, because they're saying, well, why do we always do it this way? Innovation is born on discontent with status quo.
Right.
I don't know where that came from, but you look at all the great innovations, all the great problem solvers, just they're discontent with the way things have always been done. That's the 7-year-old that comes back and says, hey, I might be 50 or 60 or 70, but why do we keep doing it this way? And that's where the revolutions occur that positively change the world. You mentioned Steve Jobs. Oh my God, the guy was human, but he kept thinking, how do I make these things easier for people? I got 3 or 4 of his products. He made it simple, and he changed the world. You talk a lot about it in your podcast, man. I watch it. How much we have information via Facebook and Apple products, and what he did, Steve Jobs, to make our world that much better.
Yeah.
So circle it back. Energy management, man, it's huge. And as you get older, you're going to go, okay, I'm not 18, I'm not 20, and I'm not 38. I'm in my mid-40s now. How do we manage father time the best we can to serve more people? CJ, I'm hitting the road hard next year. You know this. That's going to require a lot of energy, and I have to very carefully manage it. So I'm not doing stupid stuff on the road. I resist temptation. You know, there's temptation at every turn. How do you say, nope, stay on point, stay on mission, lock in, get the mission done, and resist all the crap that's around you?
Right. And, I'm glad you mentioned the upcoming tour, because I wanted to finish this with talking about your latest book, Trailblazers, Leadership Lessons from 12 Pioneers Who Beat the Odds and Influenced Millions.
Thank you, sir.
And you're going to continue this book tour into 2019. Book came out just a few months ago, right?
Yeah.
And I've got my signed copy here.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll talk. We'll leave your contact information here in a little bit, and so people can get a copy of the book themselves. But this is, you've written 4 books so far, correct?
That I know of. Yes. I've had a bunch of different group books, but yeah, there's four solo works.
What if I would have said, you have 4 kids, right? You're like, that I know of.
Yeah, exactly. I got a random Father's Day card. Oh my God.
Yeah, speaker on the road. We know what happens on the road. He's not sleeping in Denver. Yeah, sleeping in Denver. That's a metaphor.
Who are you? Who sent you?
Leadership lessons from 12 pioneers who beat the odds and influenced millions. One of the things that's unique about your books, Tony, is that so much of it is interview based.
Yep.
Why did you go with that route?
There's too much good knowledge out there, CJ. It's also, how do I take their stories and go out and share them to a broader audience that's never heard of them? Give an example. I love to promote you as a trailblazer to the Mind Capture Nation, because there's a lot of them that are into that and they're like, who is this guy? Wow, we like heavy metal too. We like his style. There's audiences we can migrate. Like a festival. We bring them into the tent and say, hey, you have CJ, or what about Gary Vee or some of my stuff, or Dan Kennedy? I love to cross-pollinate and set it off. So these interviews, I love to not just recap their stories, but what's the lesson? And I'm starting to, on the tour this year, someone interviewed me yesterday, said, hey, you need to tell more of your own stories. Yep, 19, we're going to integrate more of my own stories in with these other people that I've interviewed. Because people are like, man, your stories are really good. We want to learn more about you. So I am pulling off the gas pedal, focusing only on others, CJ, their stories, and bringing in some of my own now. So we kind of have this mixed set as a musician. Right. We got some covers from other people. We got some of my originals, and we mix them together. And that's why we hit out and we talk about trailblazers, leaders.
Right. Well, that's, it's kind of the same thing with me doing an interview base for the MarketHead podcast is because, could I do a podcast that's just me teaching one-on-one, just a monologue?
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe there's people who value that. But I feel like, and I'm sure you feel the same way, is unlike maybe other hosts, I know what questions to ask.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I know how to get, because I know how that other person thinks and ticks, and because we share a similar war stories, so to speak.
Correct.
And I know that and you get that from your interviews is the right questions to ask. One of the things that when I'll bring like a musician on to one of my other podcasts, I'll tell them, I said, listen, we're not going to ask the same stupid stuff like,
good.
What was the craziest thing that ever happened on the road? How's the recording going on the new album? None of that kind of stuff. I want to talk about your work ethic.
Yep.
I want to talk about your family life. I want to talk about how you're dealing with your health. I want to talk, we want to get and break down and talk about the things that nobody else is necessarily talking about. So like you said, there's a lot, like you got interviews in here with Dan Kennedy and others who within our industries are giants and patriarchs. Right? But to the outsider, they don't know. They don't know who they are.
They don't know.
So you're bringing people into, somebody who might have been nondescript. Like I have a friend of mine that you've gotten to know about, Metal Mike Klesiak, the
he's good
guitar player for Halford and Sebastian Bach and whatever. And who'd have thought that the guitar player for Halford is going to be this interesting a character? A Polish immigrant who was ordering mail order metal method guitar lessons, and from Doug Marks, which used to see those in the back of magazines in the early 80s.
Guitar World, and all those.
But he said that Doug Marks used to always say in his teaching tapes that encourage his students to go out and read Think and Grow Rich and other motivational books. So Doug Marks is one of the original metal motivators and one of the original marketers. And so you got, so there's people out there who are very, very interesting and have great stories to tell, but they're not being introduced into audiences unless people like you and I go in there and not just interview them, but interview them in the way they need to be interviewed. And like in the Trailblazers book, one of the things I love about it is, I'm looking here at the table of contents, is like the way you did this one. Seth Godin, big picture trailblazer. Dave Liniger, persistence trailblazer. Dan Kennedy, marketing trailblazer. Joel Comm, social media trailblazer. Jay Abraham, strategy trailblazer. On and on and on. In other words, you gave it a category, But
Yep.
the whole point was to highlight that they were trailblazers in what they were doing. Not everything's been invented yet. There's still room to
Amen.
be a trailblazer, like you said about musicians. There's somebody in a garage somewhere that's cooking up something that the world is going to say, where did this anomaly come from?
Yep.
And, you know, so Tony is more than just a speaker. You know, you're a trailblazer yourself, and that
Thank
you're
you.
looking for innovative ways to do what it is that you do, and it further differentiates and sets yourself apart. I know lots of speakers, Tony. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I know lots of them, seen lots of them, the whole 9 yards. But I knew early on that Tony was someone that I could go to war with, and I just, you know, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like one of those just divine connections, so to speak. Metal God
True.
just kind of put things together. It's like, I don't know where it's going, and I don't know what we're going to do. I just know that we're going to do stuff. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
anytime we can get to do something like today on this podcast, we're going to do that. Why the Trailblazers? What was it that, where's that idea come from?
Marketing. Really, you know, how do you reposition something that's a timeless topic like leadership, CJ?
Right.
What's my perspective on something that has been around since the beginning of time? And then how do I make it where it's interesting? What's been fascinating the last couple of years in the public vernacular online, you're hearing the word trailblazers a lot. I didn't come up with it. So it's catching on to the greater consciousness of what is going on around you. It's right. How do we look at this? Plus, now I'm starting to understand. As I look across my desk at my vision boards, I like to hike outside. There's pictures of me climbing mountains and valleys. I'm like, what is this? So it was like a natural evolution to start trailblazers. And we did the concept call because we originally self-published the book that you talked about. It had a Mind Capture title with Trailblazers as a subtitle. We said, wait a minute, there's a better word there. What's the theme?
Right.
And we did the New York call 10 months ago with 6-7 creatives and said, Tony, we want to get you away from Mind Capture and make the book Trailblazers. And I said, I was thinking the same thing.
Mm.
So how do you have that one high point where someone goes, I get it? CJ, let me take it back to what you've done that drew me into you. A referral from Sean Miller. We got to give him credit for all of this.
Got to give Sean.
Our buddy in Holland, Michigan, Sean Miller, medal up.
Mm-hmm.
He sends me this link in the video. He says, and I look at your stuff. In the age of Google, I went, and it says, Tony Robbins meets Metallica. I'm like, I'm in. So it instantly, the tag, the marketing, the message hooked me. Then I went and dug down and went, really good. So yeah, you had me at the motivation part, at hello, like Jerry Maguire. Then I dug down and went, really good too. And I became a rabid fan. So Trailblazers is really the subtitle, the original version of the book that everyone seemed to say, that's the word. And all of a sudden I was starting to do more hiking outdoors. And I'm like, Trailblaze, you do that all the time in your daily, your daily walk when you're outside with nature and communing. Then you got a subtitle word and it's in the public eye. It just all quickly hit the dimer. It was like, Trailblazers, there's your word.
Yeah.
It's been all of our branding, out blazing the trail, in some states, blazing something else.
Right. Right.
So it just seems to have caught on, but I didn't come up with it. It just is something that is marketable, CJ.
Yeah. Well, it's a great book, and he's done a great job on these. Again, self-published. So again, this is the new world of DIY.
Yep.
And very professionally done. Morgan James Publishing, which is it's a publishing company, but it's for people like us who, you need that set. You don't want to go and sell your soul to Zondervan or HarperCollins necessarily.
Wait, if the offer is enough, if they give you the right
if
terms,
they offer us enough, yeah. But just
you make a good point. They're a hybrid publisher.
Well, I was listening to the interview not too long ago, James Hetfield on Joe Rogan, and and James was just noting how Metallica had just gotten back all the publishing rights to their music. So, which is great.
I'm going like money sign. If you're just hearing the podcast, the money register.
Well, I mean, James said, so I took my kids out and I said, we're going to celebrate tonight. And they're like, what are we celebrating? He goes, I got all the rights back to my music. And they were like, what are you talking about, Dad? It's your music. Well, that's the nature of the industry. And so there's a motive to do things the way Tony's doing them because,
thank you.
You could definitely get a bigger piece of the pie. And again, the reason why labels and things were important was because you didn't have distribution. You didn't have the marketing prowess. You didn't have that. Well, now in the age of social media, and Tony's someone who invests in this. Tony has very key team members who I've met and spent time with, who understand Facebook advertising, who, understand this and that. And so he's got the people in place to make his operation work, which is why, again, Tony will welcome you to the speaking industry, but you better bring your game, because there's so much that
We're
goes.
the right people.
There's so
the
much.
Right people. I mean, CJ, you walked into this and didn't know it. I flipped you this week a referral for a logo. I said, you need to talk to CJ. He's into rock and roll. I'm like, oh my gosh, the first name was CJ. You need to talk to CJ. So I don't know what will come of that, but you talk about having the right people around you that are experts and know their thing. And he was into, like I said, he does rock photography. He's one of the best in the world, CJ, no pressure. But I thought, bring these two guys together. If it works, look out. So it's about synergy and who you know and the experts and who you run with. Yeah. It's very, very important, man.
Well, Tony, again, I appreciate so much you taking the time to be with me, and I want to do this,
my pleasure,
as much as I can with you. And offline, me and Tony talk about all kinds of things, plotting, conspiring together to do good. And so I'd love to do some more stuff with Tony, event-wise, because I think, as I'm, believe it or not, a lot of people write in, they think the motivational thing is what I do, and it's not. Yeah. That's a very small part of what pays my bills is what I do in communications, marketing, branding, all that kind of stuff. So, and when I go out to speak, when I get invited to speak, like people like yourself, the motivation is built in. You're not bringing me out to motivate your people, because your people are already motivated. B, every other speaker there is motivational. So we're bringing out the metal motivator to find out how the metal motivator does the metal motivator, right? We're going back.
We want to get you in front of more people. There's another good motive there, is to hybrid you into a lot of the groups I'm in, because there's a great number of people you're helping, CJ.
Yeah.
So when you really look at it, it's got to be helping people in positive disruption. And I'm intrigued for many years as, you don't think you speak a lot. I think you could speak more, but that's up to you. So like you're Howard Hughes. We get you out once or twice a year. So we're working on getting you out there more, but that's up to when CJ wants to do it.
Well, yeah. And I have no better friend and mentor to help me do that than Mr. Tony Rubleski himself.
Thank you, sir.
But how can people learn more about you and get your book?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. If you go to Amazon, you can get Trailblazers. Mind Capture Book is a direct URL. We have a lot of bonuses. So Mind Capture Book. Social media, pretty easy to find. Mind Capture is a business page. So if you want to like that. Personal, I'm starting to move away from that, CJ. I've been listening. We're going to max out the number of people that can follow me. Plus, we want to start moving people over to Mind Capture. So mindcapturegroup.com is my main page, Mind Capture Book. But you see a pattern here.
Right.
Facebook, Mind Capture.
Right.
I learned from the best as well, my friends. So consistency. If you Google those 2 or 3 words, you'll find me.
Yeah. So again, I would encourage you to get Tony's latest book, Trailblazers: Leadership Lessons from 12 Pioneers Who Beat the Odds and Influenced Millions. And if you're interested in having Tony come and speak, because that's part of the purpose of this podcast, Tony, is to expand my storefront, so to speak, so that people do understand the other aspect of what I do. And much like yourself, I'm bringing in the Trailblazers.
Yep.
And so we're talking about these things. So in this new age of DIY and social media, where the playing field has been leveled, you really need to support each other out there. And Tony has gone beyond when it comes to including me in his circle. So I'm very appreciative for that, my friend. And so appreciative.
I salute you, sir.
So appreciative to have you on this second episode of the MarketHead Podcast. So listen, you and I are going to touch base again.
Yes.
And we're going to get you back on this show again. And I know this is going to be really celebrated by our group members, because they see you and I go back and forth all the time. So finally,
always over good music, of course.
Always over good music. So they're finally going to get a chance to do that. And cool. So folks, please go and check out Tony today. Tony, thanks again for being with me.
You're welcome, man. Have a good weekend.
You bet. Take care.
Thanks, CJ. Bye-bye.